Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 138 of Let's Go Racing with David Starr. Tyler Jones here with you. So glad to have you with us. We are looking back on William Byron's win at the Daytona 500. The Great American Race had a Great American finish. What a race it delivered. We'll recap it all, get reaction from David and Dominic coming up in just a bit. Also, we'll look ahead to this weekend's race at Atlanta, as we'll be drafting again, and it should be an exciting weekend ahead. We'll go over our news and notes with the latest headlines around the sport, our Ask David segment as well, coming up at the end of the show, so don't miss out on that. These two gentlemen, they had a hell of a time in Daytona. I was not there myself, but I lived vicariously through these two with David Starr and Dominic Aragon both this weekend, and we'll start with David. David, Daytona, you were out there, and we saw you qualify for the Xfinity race. Got a little on-track action and everything. Tell me about your weekend. How were things down in Daytona Beach, Florida for you, man?
Man, it was awesome. It was always great when you pull through that tunnel and see that Great American Speedway. It was amazing, and the racing did not disappoint. Maybe the weather disappointed a lot of the competitors, teams, fans, and everybody, but man, tell you what, after a little bit of a challenging morning with the rain on Monday morning, about 12 o'clock, the sun came out, and the rest of the day was beautiful. But what a great Daytona weekend to kick off the season. Was amazing.
Yeah. Dominic Aragon joining us now as well. Dom, fun weekend for you as you guys officially launched the book. And you were hanging around with Geoff Bodine and the family and everything at Daytona Beach. Tell me about your experience and plugging the book and everything.
Oh, absolutely. It wasn't the weekend we anticipated. I don't think any of us were hoping for weeks and months ago. And you think Daytona, you don't want to think rain, but sometimes there's just things out of your control. But no, it's still awesome to take the family out there. Felice, Christopher, my mom and dad, her mom, my brother Martine. We all had a good time out there, and none of them had ever been to the area. So it was really cool to kind of be the unofficial tour guide and go into some of the cool places, some of the historical places in Daytona Beach. And of course, we got to see the Bodines and promote the book, all of it. Geoff Bodine, the Daytona 500 champion, telling the rest of the story. Now out, released last week on all major retailers and their website at teambodine.square.site, so you can order an autographed copy there, special as well. So it was a lot of fun to promote that, and we'll be back on the road this weekend to help promote it later, and we'll talk about that down the road in the show, but still a lot of fun. Tyler, we didn't see any racing on the track from our perspective because we had to come back Monday, and the logistics to just change everything, it wasn't going to happen. But aside from that, I mean, it really didn't, and no pun intended when I say this, it didn't put a damper on the weekend for us. I think just the family time, being able to have family in Daytona, and we make these trips, Tyler. We usually don't have our family with us, so it was really cool to have that unique blend: family, seeing racing people, and then spending time with the Bodines on Sunday and just interacting and doing all that. Definitely a lot of fun. A weekend to remember.
So I hear Dominic playing tour guide, and David, you were a bit of a tour guide as well for former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. Tell me about that experience and introducing him to our NASCAR world and Daytona and everything. How was Vivek?
Man, Vivek was awesome. Just what a great guy. I spent a lot of time with him Friday night. I got to spend time with him, watch the truck race, took his boy who was turning 4, got to put him in Carl Long's ARCA car. And I tell you what, our fans loved him. It was amazing. Everywhere he went, fans wanted to take pictures with him, talk to him. It was just a great experience. And then to back that up Sunday, I really felt, hearing Dominic talk, I really felt like the first time in my career, like I was a tour guide, but it was amazing. Vivek and his family, they had an awesome time, and man, took him to the drivers meeting. He just, it was interesting because, there was a lot of people in there, and man, again, everybody was shaking his hand, taking pictures with him, and then the Rock himself came up to him, and they took some pictures and conversated for a minute. But man, was just awesome time for him. He fell in love with NASCAR racing. I introduced him to so many people, and we walked out on the track to try oval. Then got him up in the flag stand, and it was just amazing. And then got to bring his family and himself and his security team and everybody up in the Daytona club, and the view he had, and they laid out the red carpet for him. He just had an amazing time, and just a salt to the earth person. I mean, I know he's very intelligent, very smart. He'll have a big future in politics for America, and and I think we'll hear some big news about him, in the future. Some real soon, some later on. But man, what a great man! He just had such a great time. Couldn't stop thanking me and others, and I believe him and his family fell in love with stock car racing, NASCAR racing. So it was pretty cool.
Well, I'm glad you guys had a good time. Got to enjoy yourselves and play tour guide and all that while I watched from work on Monday afternoon. But I'm certainly happy for you guys that you guys enjoyed yourselves out there in Daytona. Can't wait to be back out there next year for the Great American Race. Speaking of that, let's go ahead and talk about that. Let's begin there. William Byron gets it done. And David, we talked about this going in ahead of time. 40th anniversary of Hendrick Motorsports' debut. William Byron in the 24 car. He was looking for his first Daytona 500 win. They brought back the Flames in the yellow 24. Exalta, of course, used to be DuPont and all that. Just and the 1-2 finish too. It felt like the stars just aligned. The script was beautiful for Hendrick Motorsports. To pull this off and to have their day on that 40th anniversary. You couldn't have scripted any better for Hendrick there, David.
No doubt about it. And it was a great race, and there was a lot of great strong cars. It's just all these powerhouse teams, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Denny Hamlin. I mean, it was just I thought really the strongest car in the race was Joey Logano, and Chase Elliott. There was just a lot of strong cars that had the opportunity to win the race. And obviously, when you're racing at Talladega and Daytona, you need some luck on your side because there's always going to be the big one. You're hoping there's not, but it's just something that you just know what's going to happen, and it did happen, and it took out a lot of great cars. And just like we talk a lot, the racing gods were on Hendrick Motorsports and others. And, I believe William Byron, I think he escaped with not much damage out of a wreck. I think he maybe got a little bit of damage, but not much. And then his teammate, help me out, guys. Teammate, give me a second. Alex Bowman, those guys, I don't know. I don't remember. They might have got a bump or two, but didn't hurt them at all. And watching Ross Chastain, he had a really good shot in a great car. But I was watching him, and I'm thinking, man, he's kind of a shooting duck because of the two Hendrick cars. But man, it was a great race, and come down to the end, come off turn 4, and we saw the spin right there through the trioval. But man, it was exciting all the way to the checkered flag. But not surprised to see the Hendrick cars in victory lane. We're not surprised by that. We know that, what I was surprised was the front row was all Ford front row. And then you had, I believe, Chevrolets in the second row. But I was really, William Byron has won the pole so many times. I mean, I think Dominic mentioned that on our last podcast, what the statistics were. But I was surprised that Chevrolet did not get the pole, but hey, it doesn't matter where you start. It's all about winning, and he finally got the job done after starting on the pole so many times. And I wasn't surprised. The race was incredible. Did not disappoint any of the fans that were there and watching on television, but it could have been anybody's race, and it ended up being William Byron's.
Well, and David, take a look at the field and that big crash that eliminated virtually half the drivers with just a handful of laps to go. I think 7 to go. When you look at that, Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Kyle Busch, all these big names are, past champions as well, too. And really add to that, who do you think had the biggest heartbreak of that entire race?
Man, I would just, me personally, I think it was Joey Logano because I believe it's, just watching the race and watching how strong he was, you know what I mean? I mean, just because you have a strong car and, you can pretty much do what you want with it at tracks like Talladega and Daytona, I felt like he was the car to beat. But that being said, you still got to run the race, you know what I mean? And, I felt like he was the guy, if it was everything worked out for him, that, that he would be our winner, and I guess I would pick Joey Logano because he had such a great car. But, you guys know as well as I do, you got to have the racing gods on your side. And it's a little bit of a chess match right there at the end, you know what I'm saying? And so it was just, man, it was a great race. It didn't disappoint. And it was just unbelievable, and it was just, it's unbelievable about the two Hendrick cars and the guys that didn't get caught up in that big one at the end. They put on a heck of a show for the fans. And, and like Tyler was saying, I believe it's the 40th anniversary. I didn't catch all that. I knew there was a big deal going on, but, maybe y'all can remind me what it was, the 40th anniversary of something.
Of when Hendrick Motorsports started, yeah.
Yeah, so that's incredible, and not only did Hendrick Motorsports win the race and finish second as well, and then I think Chase Elliott was caught up in the wreck and the big one right there with 7 laps to go, but he was having a strong run, so it was just really a lot of really great cars, and like you guys were talking about, a lot of the good cars got eliminated, which was just sad, but that's plate racing, man. That's what makes it exciting. You just never know. But it came down, and the Daytona 500 did not disappoint. The finish was incredible.
So for William Byron, Dominic, I was thinking about this. Last year was his breakout season, right? Won more races than anybody, 6 last year, led the points for much of the year, was kind of the favorite going into the playoff. And this year, trying to repeat that, show that it wasn't a fluke. He starts off with a bang right away, winning the Daytona 500. And to me, it showed that William Byron really belongs. Like, you got to talk about William Byron right up there with Kyle Larson, with Denny Hamlin, with Joey Logano, with Kyle Busch. Like, if we're buying stock in any driver for the long term, I'm putting all my chips towards William Byron right now. This guy is getting hot at the right time. Really just the beginning of his career when you think about it. He and Rudy Fugle, very good 1-2 punch and driver crew chief pairing. They got a lot going for them right now. Like, there is a lot of reason to be optimistic about the future of that 24 team. This Daytona 500 win, it was a big deal. Don't get me wrong, but this is definitely not the last you'll be hearing from them.
Well, we're making stock comparisons here. This would be like a big stock split. Just winning the Daytona 500, and Hendrick has invested so much that William Byron is going to be paying dividends for years to come. But in all seriousness, too, though, I think this cemented, and correct me if I'm wrong, either of you, but I think when you have William Byron win a race like this, and not only back up how great of a year he had last year, but to do this in the 24 car, the kickoff with Hendrick Motorsports, he has cemented himself as not only a Hendrick staple, but he is the driver of the 24 car now. We know Chase Elliott filled in for that car for 2 years and then moved to the 9 car, still with the same organization. But William Byron is now the driver of the 24, and there is that separation now between him and Jeff Gordon. Now, of course, more wins, a championship or 2 or 3 or 4 are going to certainly add to that legacy. But William Byron, Tyler, has absolutely earned his mark now. He is the 24 driver, and he has the opportunity here to become a big superstar in the sport, much like Jeff Gordon did in that car.
Yeah. David, when you look at William Byron, like he's earned his seat at the table. He belongs in the conversation among the best and the best. I think that was a statement win there on Monday night.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You just go back to last year, it was in the chase, had a shot at winning a championship, did not get that done, but was in the hunt. And then to back it up, with the start of the year with the Daytona, he is now a Daytona 500 champion. That says it all right there, And So I mean, he's y'all talking about buying stock. Yeah, you'd be a fool not to buy his stock because man, he's got a long, big time superstar career in front of him. You'll see him win championships, possibly win another Daytona 500 and lots of more races. So yeah, he is definitely made a name for himself in the sport. And just hearing Dominic speak, he is the 24 driver now. Chase Elliott ran the number a couple of years, but you can put a driver in a car with a number that had an all-star driver in it. It takes a while for somebody to really kind of take over that number or identify with that number, I guess. William Byron has definitely done that, so with the 24 number. But we're not surprised by, him winning in the dominant, of Hendrick finishing first and second, Kyle Larson and like we said, Chase Elliott, they had strong cars as well. And I think we'll continue to see the dominance of Hendrick Motorsports. They have William Byron and I think Alex Bowman in the championship last year. And, I wouldn't be surprised to see all four of them make the chase, really. They're just a great organization, a powerhouse. And, but I think, we're watching greatness happen right in front of our eyes with William Byron for sure.
One more thing on Daytona, then we'll move on and look ahead to Atlanta here. Dominic, I'll start with you on this, the finish of this race. There was some controversy involved of when NASCAR decided to wave the yellow flag, which ultimately ended the race because it came after the white flag. And William Byron was leading. It took them a while to give us the visuals and everything, but ultimately that part was accurate. William Byron was leading when the caution was called. That's true. My issue, Dom, was when the caution was called. They could have called it before the white flag, and we could have gone to overtime and done all that again. But they were kind of waiting on the trigger to call a caution here. I think Dale Jr. talked about in his podcast this week. He didn't like the idea that one man essentially has the power to determine who wins the race when the race is over. I didn't like how that played out and that they didn't get the caution out sooner. Even the other idea of this too, like, why are we saying after the white flag, the next flag ends the race? Why can't we go to overtime after the white flag? Like, I don't see why we have the rule set that way.
Very good questions. Very good questions. And I think too, highlighting the fact that, and I didn't know that it was just one man, hearing that from Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s podcast, but I think that shows the human element and the human error element that could still be a part of it. We know refs aren't going to get 100% of the calls in a football game or in any other kind of professional sports. I think that shows same thing here in NASCAR. But, I got to touch on this too. And you bring up a good point on NASCAR releasing the image. When we had Dustin Long on our show last year, NBC Sports beat writer, he was the one that really took it a step further and telling us too that NASCAR has been a lot more transparent, even compared to 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And I do remember seeing that on social media on Monday night about, look, here's the still image of when the caution was thrown. William Byron was ahead. And I want to say too, Tyler, that he was 6/1000ths ahead of Alex Bowman. So technically that was the margin of victory if it wasn't under caution, or at the time of caution, I should say. But the fact that there is human element involved, maybe there's the call of having more people involved. And I get the call and trying to see if they were going to spin out to the infield, but seeing that first wreck in lap 7, lap 8, where you had Cindric or Harrison Burton bounce back off into traffic, you would think they would have been a little quicker to throw the caution. But again, I think it shows the human element in the sport.
David, you've been in these circumstances, obviously, racing in these overtimes and, these big plate races and everything here. What do you think about NASCAR's rule that the next flag after the white ends the race? Would you like to see that adapted where we still go to overtime, or is that the right rule on NASCAR's part to say the next flag ends the race, after the white comes out?
Sometimes you could be on the good side of it, sometimes you're on the bad side of it. But, we know that rule's been in place for a while now. When you come off turn 4 and they're waving that white flag. And if the leader crosses the white line and takes the white flag, if the caution comes out after that, that ends the race. That's how it's been. In years past. And I remember years ago in a truck race, how they had 5 or 6 green, white checkers, and I think they ended that years ago, because, we know at Talladega and Daytona and most tracks, if you cross start finish line and you got the white flag, somebody wrecks, well, the caution comes back out. And I think over the years and just watching how much equipment gets crashed and how much money is spent by the owners because there's so many wrecks, I think, cautions bleed cautions, you know what I mean? So it was interesting to see that wreck happen right in the tri-oval, right when the white flag was coming out, So I was interested to see, because I've been a part of that, you know what I mean? And I'm thinking, man, did the leader take the white flag? You know what I mean? Did he take the white flag? And, and we know that's the rule. Now, they got cameras. There's all kinds of camera NASCAR, the technology and all the cameras that are around the tracks. And, I think, just looking at all the cameras and seeing when the wreck happened and when the caution came out, I believe in what I know and what I saw, that William Byron had crossed the start finish line when the caution did come out. Now, when the cars are spinning and wrecking, I don't think, I don't believe the caution had came out yet. You know what I mean? Because you got that human element into it, just like Dominic was saying. So you got a flagman. The flagman's, he's going to put the caution out because he sees the wreck happen. And again, I don't really know if the flagman has a total control, or if he's getting radio from the spotters upstairs, from the NASCAR spotters. Hey, throw the caution, And the wreck happened just right before the start finish line, and I think before everybody reacted, because it takes I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 seconds for all that to happen. The leader was already past the start finish line when the caution finally came out, and that's a rule that's been consistent for a long time, Now, I asked the question, if a wreck starts to happen, as the wreck is happening, it's like, how do you take the human element out of it? If somebody starts direct, does the caution come right out right then? Boom, it's just instant, And then, then you ask the question, if a wreck starts to happen, and a car is spinning but doesn't hit anything, and maybe that caution should have came out. So, it's I'm glad that I'm not standing in the shoes of the NASCAR executive and the official, because sometimes that's there's a human element involved in it, and it's not it's not easy, you know what I mean? So do you go back and watch all the replays then make a decision, or it's just tough, man. I don't have all the answers, but I think the way it played out and the way it was, I can say that it's been consistent that way for a long time.
Yeah, it's a fair, great point from both of you. Some fantastic insights on that front. Let's look ahead to Atlanta. We'll give up our picks later on in our news and notes segment, but just kind of looking ahead, David, you've raced on this new configuration of Atlanta since it changed, became a drafting track over the last couple of years, and we've seen some very exciting racing, but it's far different from the Atlanta that we saw prior to the repave. And William Byron also has won there before under this format, by the way. David, Atlanta, if you're a fan of what we saw in Daytona, I could argue that Atlanta might even offer a better version of it, a cleaner version of that exciting pack racing that we're going to see Sunday.
Well, I don't know if I call it cleaner, but it's going to be just as exciting, very intense. Man, the Cup race at the Atlanta Motor Speedway these days are just over the top exciting. You know what I mean? whether it's going to be clean or not remains to be seen. But golly, it's amazing to see, any race at the Atlanta Motor Speedway these days, because, man, it's pretty intense. There's a lot of lead changes. There's a lot going on because, all 30 cars are on top of each other. It is drafting. It's incredible, and it'll be exciting, man. It's going to be another exciting race. And, we could see another big crash that takes out some great cars, because of the type of racing it is. But, man, it's, I'm sitting here thinking about it and just disappointed that I won't be racing Atlanta this week. Me personally got a lot of stuff going on back here with my driving school at the Texas Motor Speedway, and I wasn't able to commit to my team to make the race, and it eats at me because, man, it's such a fun race as a competitor to run that race. And just like Daytona, man, you can have a great car, a great, fast, good handling car with lots of speed, but you got to run the race. And, man, you need some racing gods on your side. You know what I'm saying? So I can assure you that all the fans watching it in the stands that'll be there and the ones watching on TV, they will not be disappointed. It's going to be an awesome race.
Dominic, one thing I look at this week, if you're a driver that raced really well last week but got caught up in an accident and it just wasn't your day, had some bad luck, whatever, this is a great opportunity to kind of hit the reset button and put Daytona behind you here. This is as good of a chance as it gets because, I mean, you could take the same setup you had at Daytona and everything here and transfer that over to Daytona and forget like Daytona ever happened.
Or on the flip side of that, to play devil's advocate, you could really dig yourself into a deep hole. Like if you're a Carson Hocevar or Brad Keselowski, that could be the potential as you head west and you have 2 bad races under your belt. Or how about flip side of that, Tyler? Corey LaJoie finishing 4th in Daytona. We've seen that Spire team run so well at Atlanta Motor Speedway with the repave, and he's come close twice to winning the Atlanta race. Who's not to say Corey LaJoie has 2 top 5 finishes in the first 2 races of the year. I don't think anybody would have had that on their bingo card even a year or 2 ago.
Who needs to have a big race this week in particular? For me, what comes to mind, David, I think Joey Logano. Joey Logano had the best car at Daytona. He was the driver to beat and got caught up in that 23-car wreck with 8 laps to go. We've seen him run well at Atlanta in the past. I think if you're Joey Logano, really any of those Penske cars, because they were all fast at Daytona, I think you come in there with the same game plan you had for Daytona and you run it back at Atlanta, and there's a good chance one of those Penske cars gets in victory lane this time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I don't know if it's a dire straight race form where they need to go out there and win, but we know that throughout the year that you're going to see Joey Logano in victory lane. We're going to see, those Ryan Blaney in victory lane, but I think, when the rear year gets kicked off, you want to get that win under your belts that could automatically put you in the chase. Once you get that win underneath your belt, you can somewhat take a breath and just go enjoy it a little bit better. All that pressure is not on you. And, so the guys that you mentioned, Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, a lot of others, Brad Keselowski, I think, with what's been happening there at Roush Fenway, Keselowski, I might be calling that team the wrong name, but I think they have a lot of momentum from last year, definitely from what we saw Chris Buescher do. And then at the end of the year, Brad was coming on. So, I think all these guys are wanting to try to win a race so they can, etch their etch their name in that chase. It's a big deal. So, week in and week out, you're going to see if these guys have some bad luck on these super speedways, I believe that you'll see a Joey Logano, Kyle Larson, all those guys are going to be the same people that we're used to seeing win more. You know what I mean? So it's going to be interesting. I don't know. For me, I don't really know who that person is that you're asking about. For me, you look at Ricky Stenhouse Jr., won the Daytona 500 last year. and was having a strong run, got caught up in that big one. I know he's a great plate racer, and and he loves going. And we got 2 races at Daytona, 2 at Talladega, and now we got 2 at Atlanta. I think for him that's really some of the better chances he's had to pull in the victory lane. You know what I mean? So there's some guys like that need to win those races, and that's one I can think about, Ricky Stenhouse.
How about you, Dom? Give me a guy that you think in particular needs to step up and have a good race Sunday.
Man, I got to think it's those guys that are below 30th in points. I mean, those come to mind like Harrison Burton, Todd Gilliland. We've seen these guys do really, really well. It's year 3 for these guys, that 2022 rookie class. Todd Gilliland looked great in the Daytona 500. We really didn't get the chance to see Harrison Burton shine, but Wood Brothers are hyping him up. Harrison Burton, year 3. I think you need to go out and make a statement. If you're in that 21 car, and we saw him spin out last year in this July race too, you got to go out, score stage points. Ford dominated qualifying in this race last year. I think 7 or 8 out of the top 10 positions. You need to be one of those vehicles on Saturday in qualifying. You need to be one of those cars on Sunday going to the front, showing I belong here. Because we really have not seen that from Harrison Burton.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. We'll move on, get to our news and notes, latest headlines around the sport coming up in just a bit. Also, our Ask David segment coming up at the end of the show as well. But Dom, take it away and get us caught up to speed on the latest headlines here.
Well, let's start with the entry list for the Atlanta race. We're going to get into odds here in a little bit, but we're looking just purely at the entry list. 37 cars entered in the Cup Series race, 39 in the Xfinity race, but really want to take a little closer look at the Cup Series entry list. You have Kaz Grala making his first start with Rick Ware Racing in that 15 car. It's his first of about 25 races for the team. He's interesting, Tyler, because he had said at the beginning of the year in a media availability, if he did good in Daytona, did good in Atlanta, I don't know if he's on the schedule for Vegas next week, he would be considering trying to find a ride to run the rest of the races if he got a good start. Well, didn't happen in Daytona. Maybe a good run this weekend. We've seen those Rick Ware Racing cars do well. That car finished top 10 in July with J.J. Haley. Josh Williams making his Cup Series debut with Colleague Racing. He has made 3 races before, but arguably, Tyler, in that Colleague 16 All-Star car, his best ride to date in the Cup Series. And BJ McLeod, the only open vehicle on the entry list. That number 78 had a heck of a ride in its dual race. BJ almost putting that in the Daytona 500. However, it looks like with 37 cars on the entry list, all are going to make the field. And that's a closer look at our entry list for the Cup Series.
Yeah. David, those names there, Kaz Grala, very talented driver. Glad to see him get an opportunity. And that Rick Ware team certainly has improved a lot within the last year or so. And then Josh Williams, we've had on this show before, talented race car driver. He's been, waiting for his chance, working his ass off to get his opportunity. Great to see him rewarded. It'd be easy to root on both these guys on Sunday.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You always want to see the guys that, have been working and have created the opportunities to step up. And, to me, I like to see these guys do well because, they're new, they're rookies, and they got all the talent in the world. And, man, they're driving some great race cars. So I'm excited for Josh Williams and Kaz Grala. So hopefully these guys can have some great runs and really shine at that level. It'll be kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely so. Dominic, what else we got?
Well, with Atlanta, we're going to look at the closer look on your odds for the Embedded Health 400 Atlanta Motor Speedway. This is the 5th installment on this style of Atlanta Motor Speedway. What is Atlanta really trying to be, by the way? Is it a super speedway, an intermediate? Is it having some sort of identity crisis? I think like Joey Logano said, perhaps a debate for another time, but your odds entering this weekend, odds on favorite across different sports books, including DraftKings, BetMGM, Caesar Sportsbook, and FanDuel, again, purely for entertainment purposes only. Denny Hamlin sitting at 1,000 or plus 1,000, so that would be a 10-to-1 style of odds, same as Joey Logano. And Tyler, you tend to see these Daytona, Talladega, and Atlanta Motor Speedway as of late, where odds makers typically won't put your early pre-week, midweek favorites at below 10-to-1 or 8-to-1 because of the style of racing that we are seeing. So you do have a few drivers that fit that bill. Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell, about 11, 12 to 1. William Byron, who's won 2 out of the 4 races on this style of Atlanta, is sitting at 12 to 1. Kyle Busch, 14 to 1. Ross Chastain at 20 to 1. And Corey LaJoie, who I was speaking about earlier, sitting at 40 to 1 at this time.
What stands out to me is Denny being the favorite again, just like he was last week. I think he was the favorite for the Clash Tool as well. And all the talk this offseason was about Denny. Everything is setting up, David, for Denny, to be the guy to beat. I know we talked about William Byron earlier. Obviously, he's the Daytona 500 champion, but this seems – it almost feels like, David, I even hate saying this, but it feels like the make or break year for Denny to finally come through and win that championship. We're talking about him every week right now, which Denny, that's probably what Denny wants, is everybody talking about him every week with the spotlight he's putting on himself.
Yeah, Denny had a strong car. He had a shot. I think he was the favorite to win the Daytona 500 because he's so good on those super speedways. But you always have to keep Denny Hamlin in the conversation because he's so fast. He's so good. He's won lots and lots of races. I mean, you look at William Byron and all the others that are favorite to make the chase and to win the chase. But man, you can't ever talk about making the playoffs and winning the championship without mentioning Denny Hamlin. You know what I mean? And you guys know I would love to see him win a championship. He's so good. He's won so many races. I would hate to see Denny not have that championship. You know what I mean? I mean, we look at not late, but we look at the great Mark Martin. Man, what a great race car driver he was, and how good of a race car driver. He won in everything. And to never have won the Daytona 500 or has a championship is really, it's not me, not you guys, but I just feel bad for Mark because he was so good, and I can't imagine Denny, I'm sure he's got many, many years left, but and it was never winning a championship and how good he was, you know what I mean? So I'd like to see him get the job done. He's got the organization behind him. He's got the team. He's got all the funding that you ever ask for with FedEx. I think, I don't know. I asked the question to you guys. I thought that might be the longest pairing driver and sponsor in current NASCAR history,
Yes.
And that Joe Gibbs organization and having all the Toyota, all the stars. I mean, everything's aligned for him to win the championship. And man, it has been. This is not the first time, I mean, it has been that way in a while, and for whatever reason, it hasn't happened. But me personally, and I'm sure a lot of other fans are hoping it finally does happen. And I think it's his to lose because, like you guys saying, like you're saying, Tyler, he's in every conversation every week in and week out. He's fast every week, So maybe this is the year for Denny Hamlin to finally get him the championship. But man, that's why the Cup Series is so exciting because, man, there's so many great drivers, so many great teams, and it'll be exciting all the way to the end.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I'd say about Denny, too, what's different is, like, he's coming close. It's not like Dale Jr., who didn't win a title in his career, but Dale Jr., I didn't think finished higher than, 4th in the standings in his career. I mean, like, Denny is right on the verge. It's got to happen sooner than later, you'd think. As far as this weekend's race goes, I know Denny's the favorite, but guys, as we get into our picks, I'll go ahead and start us off. I like Joey Logano this week. I thought he had the best car this past week. Probably should have won the Daytona 500. I think they run it back, and those Fords, those Penske teams show a lot of speed. I like Joey Logano get it done. Dominic, how about you?
Man, I got to think that it's going to come out of the Ford camp. He did win this race in the springtime, but I got to go with his former teammate to break that almost 3-year winless streak. He got passed in the last lap. Redemption if there's no wreck. Brad Keselowski to victory lane on Sunday.
Ooh, okay. Bad Brad. David, give us your pick. Who wins at Atlanta Sunday?
Man, again, every week it gets harder and harder because, man, there's so many guys have so much speed and they're good there, and again, the ones that are always, they're going to be up front, but, I'm just going to go with, they're all going to be good, but I'd like to see. I'll pick Denny Hamlin just because he's going to be fast. He'll be up there, and again, if he can avoid the big one and no mistakes by him or his team, I think he'll be the one to beat. So I'll go with Denny Hamlin.
All right, there you go. Dominic, we have anything else on news and notes?
Well, one last thing before we get to everyone's favorite segment, Ask David. NASCAR is going to be taking a little closer look. What does that mean? I guess we'll have to find out when it comes to fuel-saving strategies from the Daytona 500. The vice president of competition for NASCAR, former NASCAR Xfinity Series winner Elton Sawyer, went on SiriusXM Tuesday, and NBC Sports was reporting that ultimately the NASCAR organization wants drivers to be pushing 100% as much as they can. And Daytona, David, I'm sure would have the more accurate numbers on this, but it seems like the Cup car range window would be about 42 to 46 laps. And it seemed like in one of the stages, Tyler, we had cars pushing 50 plus laps. And NASCAR was also saying, per Elton Sawyer, that some of these cars were doing about half throttle. So NASCAR is going to take a deeper dive. Again, how that looks remains to be seen, but got to imagine NASCAR can't be too happy about that.
David, nobody wants to be seeing a fuel mileage race on these drafting tracks.
So y'all got to say that again. I kind of didn't understand what y'all were talking about.
Okay, go ahead. Explain that a little.
So, and I'm pulling this directly from NBC Sports. Quote, NASCAR is taking a, quote, much deeper dive into the fuel-saving strategy Cup teams employed during Monday's Daytona 500. Elton Sawyer, Senior Vice President of Competition for NASCAR, made the comments Tuesday morning to SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. Ultimately, we want to drop the green flag on the race, and they're racing as hard as they can until they drop the checkered flag. There's some strategy in between there, and we're definitely taking a much deeper dive into this particular situation. Because David, too, at one point during one of the stages, as it was coming to, I think, stage 2's finish, some of these cars were getting 50 plus laps on a range or within the range on their pit fuel. And I believe it's about 42 to 46 laps for the range on the Cup car.
So essentially, they don't want these drivers, David, saving fuel and worrying about fuel mileage at Daytona. NASCAR is concerned about Daytona and these plate tracks becoming fuel mileage races.
Right. So they want to make it where it's not a fuel mile race.
Correct.
Okay. And add to that, too, David, I think IndyCar had something years ago where they would have drivers pit within a certain window. Could something like that be on the table?
It's kind of interesting because, even though you don't want it to be a fuel mileage race, it's kind of interesting, how do you control that? How do you make it, it's kind of weird if NASCAR says, well, everybody's got to pit and get fuel, on these laps. I don't know. I think, if sometimes races turn into a fuel mile race, it's just kind of how it all plays out, everybody's strategy. And I just don't like NASCAR coming in and controlling that because it almost feels like they're kind of, I don't know the word you use, but
micromanaging.
They're controlling the race. You know what I mean? Yes. It just depends on how everybody's pit stop strategy is. What happens is sometimes these races become a fuel mile race. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do. But for NASCAR to step in and kind of take that element out of it, to me is, I don't really think that's what the sport's all about. I think it needs to play out just the human element, and you're going to pit when you pit in your strategy. And sometimes somebody outsmarts everybody on a fuel mileage deal, well, that's just how it works. They win the race, but for NASCAR to kind of step in and mandate that where it doesn't become a fuel mileage race, to me is not how I see this happening. You know what I mean? My opinion.
To add to that, of David's point here, Dom, like the micromanaging from NASCAR, this concern, whatever. I mean, I can't remember the last time a plate track came down to fuel mileage where guys were, running out of fuel on the backstretch at Daytona with 2 laps to go or anything like that. Like this, it just doesn't happen. These plate tracks tend to work themselves out one way or another anyway.
Well, the only ones that come to mind, at least in the stage era, 2015 Talladega, the fall race was shaping up to be that, with Biffle having a half lap lead over everyone, and then a caution came out. But then the 2017 Daytona 500, you had leaders dropping like flies because they were out of gas, like Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, when he was with Chip Ganassi, and Kurt Busch won that race. The same thing at 2018 Talladega, where you had the Stewart-Haas cars. I believe Kurt Busch was leading with 2 laps to go, ran out of gas, was
But it's
running.
still very rare, though.
Yeah, I mean, one race per 4 in 17 and 18. Yeah, I mean, you look at that. We've had 2 races in the last 24 restricted play races. It's not a common sight, and the Daytona 517 was certainly a fluke, because I can't even recall the last time something like that even happened pre-stage race.
Yeah.
But, you know, to add to that, you know, it's like if a caution comes out with so many laps left and somebody decides that we think we can make it, we're going to be 2 laps short, so we'll save fuel, we can do it. I mean, it's the strategy of when you're going to pit, if you're going to pit, and that kind of stuff, you know, and the risk of it, you know, if you don't pit, hey, I'm not going to pit. Maybe I'm running 12th. Everybody pits in front of me, and I go to the front. I'm leading. Track position's huge, and you know. And then next thing you know, there's another caution. Well, the risk you took, will there be another caution? I don't. You know what I mean? It's just a human element of how, you know, the crew chief, the engineer, how your race is, the strategy of the whole entire race, and to have NASCAR step in to maybe change that, I don't know if that's really what the sport needs to do, in my opinion. You know what I mean? It's, you know, the choices you make and how you strategize your race and when you're going to pit, that's just part of the race, you know, and everybody's different. And for NASCAR to come in there and just kind of fix that, I'm not real sure if that's what the sport needs. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. All right, let's move on. Or Ask David segment. Ask you to submit questions to us on email, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com, facebook.com/starpodcast, and on X @starpodcast. You can find us there. Our first question in the inbox this week comes from Chase. And Chase wants to know, David, have you ever pulled off any good pranks over the years?
Yeah, I have.
Of course you have.
Yeah, I think all of us have. You know what I mean? But you know, it's been a while.
What do you remember? What comes to mind, David?
Man, that's a great question. You know, that is a great question. I remember one time I was parked beside Hornaday at the track, and you know, I snuck over there and took a steering wheel and put it in my truck, you know. And you know, this was a long time ago, and you know, I was just watching to see what the team and their reaction was. You know what I mean? And it was kind of bizarre because I had to unplug, you know, I had to unplug some things to get a steering wheel off there, and I pulled it off. I couldn't believe I was going to pull it off because, you know, people, you know, the teams are watching their race vehicles, and oh man, it was kind of cute. It was funny, the panic of everything, you know, and then I told one of my guys to go tell Hornaday to come here, you know. He didn't want to come see me. He's trying to find his steering wheel, and he looked over there at me, and I was holding the steering wheel. A couple of those guys, Hornaday got a big kick out of it, but I don't think his team appreciated that. And there's been others, you know what I mean? But that's kind of funny, you know. And look, man, when you do this prank, you know, when you pull that off on somebody, you got to be expecting worse coming to you, you know. So
Yeah.
So anyway, that's one I pulled off on Hornaday years ago.
That's good. That's a great answer, Dominic.
Yeah.
Your sly one. What have you pulled off?
Oh man, I'm a little troll sometimes, and you know, maybe I'm a little mean, but this one came to mind. This is a recent one. So my mom, my dad, we're all going to Vegas. We're going with Felice and Christopher. He's newborn at the time, and we're traveling out there. We're gonna go see Sting in concert. This is like almost a year ago, so around Easter time. And Joe Laraquente, a friend of the show, Doorstop Nation, he's filled in a couple of times. He was meeting us out there. And so fitting because it was the weekend of April Fools. It was like April 1st or something. We're all going to dinner that night. And I tell my mom, hey, just just a heads up. Just when you talk to Joe, he's a little hard of hearing, so you're gonna have to really talk loud when you speak to him. And she's like, "Oh, okay, no problem." And she starts asking me, "Well, what happened? Like, was he born that way? What's going on with it? So I can be more aware." And I said, "Oh, he's just been to too many NASCAR races." And she's like, "Oh, okay, okay." So we're on the way to Vegas, and I'm texting Joe this. I said, "Hey, just I know you've never met my family. Looking forward to it. Just a heads up. My mom's a little hard of hearing, so you're gonna need to talk a little loud when you talk to her, when you meet her." So he's like, "Oh, okay, no problem." And he goes, "Well," I tell him, I said, "Yeah, I have to, I speak up a little bit when I talk to her, so you might need to do that." And then he writes me back. He goes, "Well, you're loud. That explains a lot." So I'm okay, whatever that means. So okay, we end up all going to dinner. My brother's in on the prank. I'm trying to contain my laughter. And I think the ultimate irony on it is okay, we go to this restaurant and it's loud in Vegas. They're kind of talking loud back and forth and it's shaping up great, but they're shouting at each other from across the table, but there's music playing. So I really don't know if that had something to do with it. And the music kind of stopped. And as we leave the restaurant, they're all talking normal to each other. So it was a great setup. It was a great idea. And then ended up telling them about it. And they all turned on me and like, really? You're a jerk. They called me a lot worse terms I can't say on the show, but yeah, it was one of those pranks that I still had a good chuckle on throughout the day. And I know the setup on that was better than what actually was executed. Still a good time though. You, Tyler, I'm sure you've had a few pranks yourself in your day.
So you guys have a chuckle out of this. This was not an intentional prank, but those are the best pranks when it's unintentional. This past week, actually, in our office, we ordered Chick-fil-A for lunch for the whole office. Okay. I love me some Chick-fil-A. David probably loves Chick-fil-A too. Um, we so we ordered Chick-fil-A and they messed up my order. They didn't bring me the right food. So I just grabbed the next closest thing to my order. I ate it, it was all gone. And then my boss comes out and he says, "Hey, anybody seen my sandwich with extra pickles?" And I'm like, "Oh shoot, that was me. Oopsie." I got a little earful for eating the boss's lunch, but that was a boss move on my part to eat the boss's lunch.
Yeah, that's trolling at the next level without even trying to be a troll, Tyler. That's awesome.
That's funny, Tom.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was me last week. I still have a job, so it's all good. So
We
That's
have
a good
eating,
thing.
we have eating the boss's food, taking a steering wheel, and telling two people that they're hard of hearing just to get reactions out of people. Man, we did all right, guys.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
next question. In the inbox, Lisa wants to know, David, if you could pick out just any car to drive, what would it be on the street?
Man, that's a great question. I got a beautiful Corvette. I like my pickup trucks. Uh, my wife drives a pretty nice car, but I don't know, it'd be kind of cool. Because I see them all the time, McLarens or a golly, what are they? The McLaren and a Lamborghini, and some of those cool looking cars that are very rare. When you see one, you're just like, wow. Wonder how that thing drives, what it's like to drive a car like that. It'd be kind of cool to have a really exotic sports car like a McLaren or a Lamborghini. I just think that'd be kind of awesome, and whether we all would want one, and we just gawk over when you see one, and who knows if we really would like the way they drive or how you sit on them. But man, it'd be kind of cool to have a Lamborghini or a McLaren, wouldn't it, guys?
Great choice. What about you, Dom?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I second that, Dave. I think it'd be a great choice. I think modern, Tyler, I think it'd be really cool. I really, really enjoyed the Chevy SSs when they were in the Cup Series. And I think they'd make 4,000 or 5,000 street vehicles every calendar year. And I'd see them on the road from time to time here in New Mexico, but they look like an Impala, but then you kind of look at the side and they've got those side vents and it's got the Corvette 427 engine in it. Really, really fast car. I think 485 horsepower. I'd like to get behind the wheel of one of those. I sat in one at a dealership. They wouldn't let me test drive it.
Really?
Yeah. Well, college kid, and they're like, "Well, how much do you make?" I'm not
Oh,
going to disclose that, and they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we're not letting you drive this."
oh, okay. That makes a little more sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be Ferrari for me. Like I have been fascinated with Ferraris, and I think every time I see one, it just stops and grabs my attention. Like almost like a naked woman or something. Like it I stop and stare. Like when I see a Ferrari, like I'm just fascinated with it. Not just the look of the car, but then to actually get in and drive and see what it could do and try to get the top end speed. Like to me that's what gets me, David. It's twofold. It's not just how it looks, but how it drives. Like you want the full experience.
Absolutely, man. I completely agree with you. Ferraris, Lamborghinis, McLarens, man, all those cars are just, they just you just kind of freeze and you see one. It's just like, you're just so focused on it. You know what I mean? It's just, they're rare, and when you see them, they definitely grab your attention.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Guys, we're about to wrap up and get out of here. I know that I'm not going to be in Atlanta. And David's not going to be there, but Dominic, you're back on the road again, right? You're about to go to Atlanta, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll be back in Atlanta. Going to be helping the Bodines and covering the race too. We'll be promoting our book, all of it. Daytona 500 Champion tells the rest of the story. So if you're at the Speedway, we'll be set up in the fan zone Saturday and Sunday. And Jeff's got some appearances throughout the race weekend. So it's going to be a fun time out there. And I know Buddy and Paige listen to the show. I'm looking forward to seeing them this weekend. David, friends of the podcast. So we'll have a good time visiting and catching up with them and just helping the team with the racing experts cover all the action on the racetrack. But should be a good time. And Tyler, I'm even really more excited because third time's a charm. Go to the Clash, it rains, and they move up the race. Daytona 500, it rains, and they move back the race. There's no rain in the forecast Saturday or Sunday.
All right. So if it rains, we know who to blame. That'll be on Dominic. I'll say this, David. You mentioned the book stuff and all this. I don't think Dominic's mentioned this. So a while back, David told Dominic and I, he saw our signatures and he said, "Y'all need to work on your signatures. Like, they just aren't very good." And like, you're not wrong. And with this new book, Dominic, David, I'm happy to report, has updated his signature. So for people that are getting the signed copies of this book that Dominic has written, they are getting the improved signature as recommended by David Starr.
That's I like that, but man, I don't know, man. You see some people how they sign their name, and it's like, man, you can't read it. And you guys know me long enough. I'm a neat freak. I like my house clean, my car is clean, my yard nice, and when somebody's gonna sign their name, you ought to have pride enough in who you are to be able to read, let it be legible. You know what I mean? Be able to read it. So yeah. So it's sometimes I see people signing their name, and it's like, man, you don't even know what it's like. They're scribbled. You know what I mean? It's like, what is that? So I mean, so if Dom's name, if he signs his name to something, I mean, I don't know. You ought to take pride in how you sign your name. I don't know.
Hey,
Maybe
no, I
I'm
agree
just a
with that,
weird
David.
guy, you know what I
You
mean?
have imparted some really good advice on us over the years, and I really did think about that too. Because, and I got to say too, it's been one of those things where it's been humbling and like awe to me that really you'd want me to sign your book. Jeff's the star of it, and even my wife Felice has told me just take the compliment. You're honored that somebody wants to have that a part of it. And it really got me thinking too, back to our conversation on that a couple of years ago. So if you are watching the YouTube version, this is the updated signature. I promise you it looks a lot better. That will be the official signature. Much better improved, Tyler.
My signature's still the same, but I'm not writing any books, and nobody's begging for my autograph, so it's all good. David, you're not going to Atlanta, but you still have plenty of stuff on your plate. What's going on with you?
Oh man, just golly, I just got lots of we announced Team Texas just got a new sponsor for next couple of years. We changed the name of our racing school a little bit and came out with a new logo. And man, we're busy. Got some new some sponsors for our cars and changing wraps. Just fixing cars. We coming up in March. We probably got 9 corporate events. So just trying to get ready for that. And man, I just been gone for 8 days getting ready for Daytona. It kind of put me behind. So far behind that I wasn't able to race at Atlanta Motor Speedway this weekend, and that's nuts. I was just telling somebody today, I would have never thought that, that my racing school business would hold me back from going to a race. You know what I mean? But man, I was looking forward to going to Atlanta, but sometimes you got to take care of some other business before you can do that. And man, after what happened, not being able to race at Daytona, man, I can't wait to get back in the race car and go run a race. It's killing me. So, but anyway, I'm looking forward to racing again soon.
Yeah, can't wait to see you back out on the racetrack. I'm holding things down here in Dallas this weekend, but I cannot wait to get to the racetrack for the first time next year. Next week in Vegas. So that'll be a lot of fun. Joining Dominic and the boys and all that next week. So certainly look forward to that. We will get out of here. Big thanks to you, the listener, for joining us. Make sure to subscribe to Let's Go Racing with David Starr. New episodes out each and every week. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Download us. Check us out for free each and every week. Like the show if you're watching on YouTube as well. We would certainly appreciate it. Follow us on social media at Star Podcasts on X, Facebook.com/Star Podcasts, and email us, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. For David Starr, Dominic Aragon, I'm Tyler Jones. Saying so long.